Recording in progress.
Mag-submit po pala kayo rito sa ano, ma'am, if you have something really relevant, Journal of Public Affairs Education. Q1
Okay.
journal to ISI, and they really
Okay.
want to get submissions from the Philippines. I sit on the editorial board of this journal. Ito po yung
Okay.
official journal pa ng NASPA.
Anas pa, yes. Kasi
Yes.
I use their ano eh.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are on the second part of the webinar series on navigating the pedagogy of public administration in the new normal. I am Ces Manzo Daza of the Ateneo de Naga University, Master in Public Administration and Master in Business Administration cluster, your host for today. We begin the session by putting ourselves in the holy presence of God as we have the opening prayers.
Let us put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for gathering all of us today in this important event. May you grant us your guidance and blessing in this event so that we can enjoy and accept its significance in our lives. Bless everyone present today that each may be able to share what she or he has for your glory and honor. Grant good health and safety to loved ones left at home and peace and goodwill to all men. May the various activities related to this event may be a success through your intervention. We ask all of this in your name. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Okay, so during the first session last September 27, we learned about appropriating pedagogical strategies in the delivery of public management, administration, and governance, instruction in the new normal. Today, we will learn on the topic, developing research to strengthen PMAG education in response to societal issues. The pandemic introduced a wide latitude of changes in today's world. We sure have our fair share of stories about the adjustments it introduced to us, by will or by force. Now, post-pandemic, we go through the new normal with myriads of transformations and societal issues that needs to be addressed. Today's session is therefore both a response and preparation to these, considering the role and value of continuously exploring the means to strengthen PMAG education geared towards a better public service. This webinar series is brought to us by the Ateneo de Naga University Center for Local Governance, together with the Graduate School and in partnership with the Association of Schools of Public Administration in the Philippines Incorporated, ASPAP. This is proof of the shared dedication of these institutions to improve and enrich the instruction, research, and practice of public administration and governance in the Philippines. So, of course, we start this activity by acknowledging the participants and our sponsors. We are deeply honored to have this opportunity to host this trilogy with the support of ASPAP elected officers and board members for the year 2022 to 2025, led by its President, Dean Mitchell A. Rivera from Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Valenzuela. Also, Vice President for NCR, Dean Elmer M. Soriano of the Polytechnic University of the Philippines. The Vice President for Luzon, Dr. Cristina R. Salvosa of the Nueva Vizcaya State University. Vice President for Visayas, Professor Jaya Trisha G. Bayolena of Palawan State University. Vice President for Mindanao, Dean Zoraida P. Ali of Mindanao State University, Marawi Campus. Our Treasurer, Assistant Professor Juve Lizette M. Hervasio of the University of the Philippines Open University. Our Auditor, Dr. Jack Isolana of the Mindanao State University Iligan Institute of Technology. We also have our Public Relations Officer, Dean Malusi Barceliano of the Ateneo de Naga University. And for the Membership Committee Chairman, Dr. Gretchen Gay C. Ablaza from Benguet State University. Research and Publication Committee Chairman, Professor Maricel P. Fernandez Carag from De La Salle College of St. Benilde. The Continuing Education and Faculty Development Committee Chairman, Dr. Maria Rita A. Riario from Isabela State University. The Chairman of the Linkages and International Relations Committee, Dr. Madeline D. Tinko from Pangasinan State University. Chairman of the Fora and Conferences Committee, Dr. Victoria P. Valenzuela from Bulacan State University. The Chairman of the Laws, Rules, and Regulations Committee, Dr. Rene C. Tabajen from the University of Makati. The Chairman of the Quality Assurance Committee, Dr. Eminel Jane M. Albior from Ateneo de Davao University. And the Chairman for the Special Projects Committee, Dean Mitchell A. Rivera, Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Valenzuela. Of course, and definitely not the least, we acknowledge our participants live via Ateneo de Naga University Center for Local Governance Facebook page and YouTube channel. This event is participated by 54 different schools, mainly from the Ateneo de Naga University, Bulacan State University, Batangas State University, Ilocos Sur Polytechnic State College, Pangasinan State University, Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Valenzuela, Sorsogon State University, Taguig City University, and the University of the Philippines Open University, along with many other universities with us. We also acknowledge our partners from various sectors, local government units, non-governmental organizations, and private agencies who are with us through the mentioned platforms. So there we go. We have acknowledged our participants. And so we are here to give the final reminders before we begin. So for the webinar guidelines, this online event is open to public with free registration. The webinar can be accessed exclusively live via ADNO Center for Local Governance Facebook page and YouTube channel for both registered participants and other interested viewers. For registered participants, kindly leave a comment. I, full name from academic institution and/or affiliation, have registered present on your preferred viewing platform for your attendance. We are highly encouraging to post your questions through the comment section while the presentation is still ongoing. The moderator will be acknowledging your questions and address them to our speaker during the open forum. Please note that we will only be issuing e-certificates to those who have registered, attended, and completely filled out the evaluation form. We will be releasing the link of the online evaluation form at the end of the webinar. Please give us time to prepare your e-certificates to be sent via email. We're done with the preliminaries, and now to formally start our webinar, let us hear an opening message from none other than the Ateneo de Naga University Father President, Father Roberto Ezequiel N. Rivera of the Society of Jesus.
My dear friends, mga tugang, a good day to all. Just marhaina aldaw po sa Indugabos. And a warm welcome to everyone on this latest installment on the webinar series on navigating the pedagogy of public administration in the new normal, offered to you by the Ateneo de Naga University Center for Local Governance in cooperation with the Association of Schools of Public Administration in the Philippines. It is my distinct honor and pleasure to welcome you because this promises to be a truly enriching session today. We are blessed and we are grateful for the presence of Dr. Ador Torneo, the director of the Jesse Robredo Institute of Governance of the De La Salle University. We are grateful for our graduate school faculty and program director, Dr. Marshall Murillo, who will be moderating the open forum later, as well as Dr. Jack Solana, auditor of the Association of Schools of Public Administration in the Philippines, who will also give remarks later. My dear friends, we know that leadership and governance in this time of recovery from the pandemic will be crucial as we strive to move forward as a nation, as a region, as a community. And our attempts to move forward will need to be hinged, will need to be founded on sound research, on sound knowledge and data. And that is why we look forward to today's topic, as Dr. Torneo will speak to us on the importance of research in strengthening public management, administration, and governance education here in the Philippines as we respond to the challenges of the post-pandemic period. My hope and prayer for all of you is that this session will be a truly informative one, and that our efforts to strengthen leadership and governance during this time will be bolstered by our learnings during today's session. I would like to thank in a very special way our graduate school dean here at the Ateneo and the director of our Center for Local Governance, Dr. Malu Barceliano, for all her efforts and her team in organizing this. I hope you have a good seminar. Once again, a warm welcome to all, even though virtually, here to the Ateneo de Naga. A fruitful and meaningful seminar to everyone. Salamat po, as in, Diyos mabalons.
Okay, thank you, Father President, for the welcoming message. I am sure we are excited to listen to the contents of today's topic. So let me take the honor of introducing our resource speaker. Dr. Ador R. Torneo is a full professor in the Department of Political Sciences and Development Studies and the director of the Jesse M. Robredo Institute of Governance, both in De La Salle University, Manila. He is formerly the editor-in-chief of the Scopus Index International Journal, Asia Pacific Social Science Review. He is a well-published, highly accomplished development and governance scholar and public policy practitioner, actively engaged in various national and international organizations, including but not limited to the Philippine Open Government Partnerships as academic representative, the Philippine Political Science Association secretary, and the Korea Association for Policy Studies, director for internationalization. His works have not only influenced scholarship but also public policy. He was bestowed the Achievement Award in 2023 by the Department of Science and Technology, National Research Council of the Philippines for Division 1, Governmental, Educational, and International Policies. This is the highest recognition given by the Council for those whose works greatly contributed to the advancement of their respective fields of expertise and responded to the needs and challenges of society. Dr. Torneo received his Bachelor of Science in Community Development and Master of Public Administration degrees from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and his Doctor of Philosophy in Public Administration degree from Konkuk University in Seoul, South Korea, all with distinction. And so without further ado, we are honored to give the virtual floor to Dr. Ador R. Torneo.
Good afternoon, everyone. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Thank you very much, Mrs., for that very generous introduction. And thank you very much for the Father President, Father Roberto Rivera, SJ, for that welcome message. Again, also thank you to Dr. Dean Malu Barceliano of the Graduate School and the Center for Local Governance of the Ateneo de Naga University, our friends and colleagues from the Association of Schools of Public Administration in the Philippines, led by Dean Mitch Rivera, and everyone that is present here. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. And thank you very much for the invitation to talk about a topic that is very dear and very close to my heart. So as was mentioned earlier, my name is Ador Torneo, and I am from the De La Salle University. I'm a professor at the Political Science and Development Studies Department and the director of the Jesse M. Robredo Institute of Governance. So I have been requested to talk about developing research to strengthen public management and administration and governance, education, and response to societal issues. So please allow me to share within the next hour some of my thoughts about this topic, and then I hope that we can have a very fruitful and meaningful exchange about this topic. So siguro first, maybe it's very important that I will make this disclaimer. I am not really the sole expert on this topic. I think research with regards to public management, administration, and governance education is a topic that is close to the heart and what is done, what we do as scholars of public management, public administration, and governance. No? So lahat tayo ng nasa ASPAP and all of us who are here this afternoon are in one way or another stakeholders, and not one of us can claim sole ownership of this particular issue or expertise on this topic. This is something that's very close to the heart of what we do. So second is what I'm going to share this afternoon does not really come from textbooks, or from references. It's really more of my own insights and opinions about these topics. I'm also going to refer to some publications, policies released by the Philippine government, in particular through the Commission on Higher Education. I'm also going to share some work and cite some of the work of my alma mater, the National College of Public Administration and Governance in the University of the Philippines. And then I'm going to share some of the works of my seniors, mentors, and professors, as well as some of my own work on the topic. Maybe just a little bit about me. Nabanggit na kanina during the introduction, but I'm Ador Torneo. I'm a researcher of public administration and one of the relatively more active researchers in public administration. I teach public policy, public administration related courses in De La Salle University, as well as in the Philippine Public Safety College, occasionally in the Development Academy of the Philippines and the National Defense College. No, so I'm a very active researcher. Relatively, when I say relatively, because in the last 10 years of my career as a full-time faculty member, I have spent as administrator, and all of my colleagues who are administrators here know if you're an administrator, you're only a part-time faculty and a part-time researcher, no, and mostly administrator. So I've published a couple of articles, no, on public administration, comparative public administration in the Philippines and South Korea, which are my areas of expertise, and to a lesser extent, public administration and public policy in Southeast Asia. So the outline of what I'm going to do, or what I'm going to discuss this afternoon, encompasses the following. First is a review of the purpose and scope of PMAG education. I know, no, this is something that's kind of, for most of us, is taken for granted, but I think it's a very important anchor to talk about research, no, going back to the basics, no, the rationale, the rationale, raison d'être, no, reason for existence of public management, administration, and governance education. I'm going to talk a little bit about the challenges of Philippine education with regards to public management, administration, and governance, as well as the challenges of research, where the research is, where do we situate research and Philippine public management, administration, and governance education. I'm also going to talk about something that's still pending. No, I just learned this afternoon that it's still pending. The 5-year Philippine Public Administration Management and Governance Education Roadmap. No, and then in the last is I'm going to put an emphasis, especially on strengthening research for PMAG education. Okay, so most of my discussion this afternoon will be drawn from my own personal experiences and insights, but I will have to acknowledge that I did get some ideas, references, and materials first from the draft 5-year Philippine Public Administration Management and Governance Education Roadmap. I have a draft of the copy because I'm one of the resource persons, but I understand this has not yet been released to the public. So I just have some of the working papers. I'm going to cite mostly my own work as cited in this roadmap. I'm also going to cite my work. I have a seminal article titled Public Administration Education in the Philippines, 1951 to 2020, History, Challenges, and Prospects. This is one of my most recent work. I'm glad I wrote it in 2020, and one of the most well-cited work on Philippine public administration education. I also have one unpublished work that is I'm going to cite this afternoon. The title of this work is The Responsiveness of Master in Public Administration Program in the Philippines to the Needs of the Public Sector and in Addressing Contemporary Challenges, written during the midst of the pandemic and co-authored by me and Ms. Hias Clamor Tornay. So without further ado, I'm going to go into my discussion. But let me start, no? Unlike some of the other presentations where you have to wait in suspense until the end, let me start by giving you, or at least mentioning, the key takeaways from this discussion. I'm going to share the key takeaways just in case you forget everything else I'm going to discuss. I hope that you will at least remember one or two things from these key takeaways. The first one is that one basic premise and one basic argument that I will make is that public management, administration, and governance education must respond to societal needs and support national development goals. This includes the goals that had been articulated in the Philippine Development Plan, the Ambition 2040, and the Sustainable Development Goals, which our government has committed to abide by, no? So public management, administration, and governance education does not exist in a vacuum. We do not just create or identify our own needs to address or what we want to do. We have to be aligned with what the rest of the society, no, accepts, and what the state acknowledges as part of its goals, no. So this is something, a basic premise of of this discussion. Second is that public management, administration, and governance research must address the needs of Philippine public management, administration, and governance education and the needs of the Philippine public sector. No, I am under no illusion that that the research only has to address the needs of the education sector, specifically public management, administration, governance, education. But that research also exists intrinsically for its own good. No, there are many reasons why research is important, even outside of pedagogy and outside of education. But I think that given the nature and character of public administration, public management, and governance research, it will have to be aligned with and must address the needs of the Philippine public sector. No, by definition, this research should be oriented and directed to the Philippine public sector. The third key takeaway that I would like to emphasize is for the Philippine public management, administration, governance research to flourish, it is necessary to bolster research production outside of the core centers in NCR. No, the Institute of Public Administration since 1951, now the National College of Public Administration of Governance in UP. It has branched out to several institutions. Many of them are NCR or in Luzon. No, has been remained as the core and the driving force of public management, administration, and governance research. But this has been a two-edged sword, no? This has been the core and the center, but much of the work in this discipline and profession has largely been constrained and limited within NCR. No, we need to bolster research production to the regions if research in this discipline and profession is to flourish. And my last key takeaway point is strengthening Philippine public management, administration, and governance research requires institutional commitment, resources, capacity, and an enabling environment for it to be relevant, responsive, and for it to scale at the level that is required or is necessary for it to be relevant and responsive to the needs of the public sector and the Philippine public management, administration, and governance education. Okay, those are my 4 key takeaways. So let me start with some notes, no? Some quick background and overview about public management, administration, or PMAG education in the Philippines. So a lot of our discussion is anchored in acknowledgement or recognition of what is the purpose, the rationale, raison d'être, the reason for being of Philippine public management, administration, and governance education. So relative to some of Western public administration, no, the Philippine public management, administration, and governance education, the framework, the way that we approach this is relatively young. No, modern Philippine public administration education can be traced back to 1951. With the institutionalization of establishment of the Institute for Public Administration in the University of the Philippines, in line with the post-World War II reconstruction efforts, no? The main reason why IPA, Institute for Public Administration, and public administration programs were established was to prepare graduates to enter Philippine civil service. So the reason being much of the human resources, the personnel of the Philippines was decimated as a result of the World War, the Second World War. There were a lot of vacancies and a lot of positions and a lot of capabilities and expertise that were lost during that time. So the IPA was established in the University of the Philippines to try to accelerate or to enhance the replenishment and the re-establishment of many important government institutions. In particular, public administration programs were established to staff the Philippine civil service with highly trained, competent personnel, not just at the entry level, but also at the management and the senior level. This was in 1951. No? So much of the focus of public administration is really the civil service. Since 1951, however, 1951 is already like 73 years, no? 72 years, no, from now. The role and the purpose of public management, administration, governance, education has evolved. Originally, the scope of these educational programs and graduate programs and diploma programs was really geared towards the civil service, but civil service has expanded into the public sector in the broader sense. When we say the public sector, we not only talk about government, but also other organizations with a very strong public character and orientation. No? This includes non-government organizations, voluntary associations, development organizations. Within government, it has also expanded and gone beyond the civil service to encompass also positions that are considered to be within the political realm, the elective posts. No? So from one institute in 1951, that is the Institute of Public Administration in the University of the Philippines, the number of higher education institutions in the Philippines offering public administration, public management, public policy, and related programs, similar related programs, has increased to 337 as of 2023. I think not all of them are members of ASPAP, ano po, ma'am? But this is just to show that this type of education programs has actually expanded. All right. So to give you an idea, what are we teaching? What is actually being taught in these programs at present? So this comes from a study that I did in 2020 with Ms. Hias Clamor Turneo, that the core programs or core subjects of most MPA, Master in Public Administration or Master of Public Management programs now include the following: research methods, theories, practices, and principles in public administration, statistics and research, human resource management, public fiscal administration, organization and management, and public policy development and analysis. This is not to say that there are no other, no, but these are the top 7 courses that are offered as core or are majors in this type of courses. Okay, this gives you an idea that the orientation to the public sector, no, incorporates studies on research in the public sector, statistics, theories, and of course some very practical matters like human resource or personal administration, organizational management, and fiscal administration, as well as public policy. This, on the other hand, are some of the most common electives in graduate PA programs. So, syempre, pag kung meron kang core tsaka major courses, meron ka ring electives, no? So, organization studies is one of the most common electives. This include courses on human resource management and development, organizational behavior, management, planning and control, etc. So you have general electives like seminar courses or special problems and challenges in public administration, subjects from allied fields of specialization, public administration and social change, public policy and program administration, local governance and regional administration. I understand that the Ateneo de Naga Center for Local Governance, no, looks at this, media communication and public relation, ethics, accountability and good governance, rural development, and public fiscal administration are some of the most common electives when we did a study of publicly available PMAG curricula. So why are we, or what are we looking to do? No, we are equipping students of public management, administration, and governance courses. No, we're making them take these courses as compulsory, core, major, and or giving them an option as elective courses. But looking from the perspective of the government as articulated in the Commission of Higher Education Policy Standards and Guidelines, what are we aiming for, or what are we trying to do with public administration graduates? So there is currently no existing policy standards and guidelines for graduate programs of public administration, but I think the existing policy standard and guidelines for BAPA, or the Bachelor of Arts in Public Administration programs, is instructive, no? So let's cite CMO number 6 of 2010, specific professions, careers, or of occupations that are explicitly articulated in the guidelines. It says, to wit, graduates of the Bachelor in Public Administration program are prepared for the following jobs: entry-level job, technical assistants in government and civil society, researchers in government, civil society, and academic institutions, development managers of small and medium-sized voluntary sector or civil society organizations. There is also an acknowledgement of advanced office positions like executives in national and local government institutions, including government-owned and controlled corporations, elected positions in local and national government, executives in national, regional, and international organizations, and development managers of large voluntary sector or civil society organizations. So like I said before, we are producing graduates in public administration for the purpose of the public sector, no? Primarily government, but not only government, but also civil society and non-government organizations with a public character, elected positions, and other organizations with a public, that serves the public interest. No, similarly, the draft 2017 CMO, which was not approved but has been drafted, gives us an idea about the intention of the government with regards to this topic, no? Similarly, technical assistants and middle managers, no? Emphasis now on management in government and international organizations, researchers and trainers in government, civil society, and academic institutions. I think it's no wonder that research is the top single most common core or major course that's taught in all public administration, public management programs. Development or project managers of small and medium-sized voluntary sector or civil society and international development organizations. You see, it has expanded not just for voluntary sector and NGOs, but also international development organizations. And advanced office position like executives in national and local government institutions, elected positions in local and national government, executives in national, regional, and international organizations, and development or program managers of large voluntary sector or civil society organizations. So we are producing graduates primarily for this purpose. But since 1951, no, that the implementation and rollout of public management, administration, governance, education, despite the increase in the number of institutions, higher education institutions that are teaching and granting degrees, no, in this field, has expanded by more than 3,000%, has not been smooth sailing. There has been a lot of challenges, no? So for this, I'm going to cite the roadmap of Philippine education, which cites this scholar named Torneo, no? Dividing some of these challenges of Philippine public management, administration, governance, education into three. No? The development of the education programs, its relevance and responsiveness. First is the challenge of content. No? Much of the content of Philippine public management, administration, governance, education is primarily revolves around Western public administration, specifically American public administration. There has been very little acknowledgement and embrace of other public management or public administration paradigms and traditions. What are those? Islamic public administration, Chinese and Confucian public administration, which has more than 5,000-year history. No? Those two are very long and well-established public administration paradigms and traditions. But you will find, if you review the curricula, that these two are barely present, if at all. No? Second is the limited indigenous scholarship that kind of limits the relevance and responsiveness of many of these education programs. There are only a handful of textbooks and reference materials on Philippine public administration, and most of them had been produced in the University of the Philippines. There are very few case studies, very few publications, as I will show you later, and very limited indigenous scholarship. So much of the scholarship in public administration revolves around or have been produced by scholars in the University of the Philippines and a few other institutions. But outside of these institutions, there are very few materials. I will show you later saan nanggaling yung mga materials, in references. This means that many teachers and faculty members of these programs heavily rely and utilize references, textbooks, case studies, and articles that have been produced elsewhere, primarily in Western countries, which vary and differ in context. Napakaiba ng konteksto nila. This kinds of limits the relevance of many of these materials. The others is in terms of responsiveness, in terms of environment, regulatory issues. Is there a quality control? Is there a uniform set of standards and guidelines? There is no policy standard and guidelines for graduate programs of public administration, public management, governance in the Philippines, but there is a policy standard and guidelines for Bachelor of Arts in Public Administration program. The other one is much of the scholarship, and much of this curricula is developed in a very limited institution. I am going to go to that later. Second, in terms of faculty, very diverse ang faculty ng public administration in the Philippines. But we noted that several surveys and studies of faculty members, faculty of public administration show that many of them actually have very limited background or expertise in public administration. So public administration graduate degrees, public administration, public management, and governance majors, or areas of specialization at graduate level. Many teachers around the country have limited qualifications or no qualification at all in public administration. This is not to say that they are not qualified, because public administration by its nature is a highly eclectic discipline. But if you're going to look at their qualification in terms of their orientation and familiarity with public administration as a field of discipline and practice, you will see that very few of them actually have formal training in PA, or public management. So for graduates and job opportunities, there is a lack of competency framework to serve and guide for curriculum design. I think we have to acknowledge that public administration, public management, governance courses were originally and primarily designed to prepare and to equip candidates and graduates to serve in the public sector. But the Philippine Civil Service actually does not have a competency map, or a competency map is not well established. Or if it is established, I've seen some documents pertaining to some identified competencies with the Philippine Civil Service. There seems to be very little discussion, and there seems to be little connection in terms of what the civil service emphasizes to be the competency needs of the civil service, and what many public administration, public management, and governance courses actually emphasizes within their curricula. Okay? The other is that a separate technical panel for public administration has not been established until 2020. Prior to this, the technical panel was subsumed under business management, business and management and administration program. The assumption there is management and administration is administration, whether public or private. But there are very distinct characteristics and distinct needs of public administrators, or public administration, and it has not been formally institutionalized into policy until around 2020, when the first technical panel of public administration was established. The other is the current trends. There is there are two tendencies for Philippine public management, administration, and governance education. The first one is a tendency to be very narrowly constrained within specific case studies, within specific cases within the Philippines, discussing this as if they exist within a very particular vacuum, but bereft of any context of what is happening elsewhere. No, the Philippines might be developing country, and we might have our distinct or particular characteristics, but we are not the only developing country in the region or in the world. No, many of our civil sector, public civil society, public administration, voluntary sector and development, and governance challenges are shared with similarly situated countries and governments. Okay, but the lack of comparative studies, the lack of anchoring within a global context kinds of limits, no, the way that we do our analysis. In terms of students, students of public administration, graduate school, and undergrad, graduate school in particular, come from very different backgrounds. Some are fresh graduates, some of them are middle professionals, some are relatively senior or upper middle management professionals within the civil service. And it's a question whether or not we are tailoring or we're giving them an appropriate set of options that tailors their specific needs and qualifications. And the last point is instruction. The pandemic has caught many of us unaware and unprepared to manage or to transition within an alternative set of modality of instructions. We're glad we have colleagues here from the UP Open University and those colleagues here who are quite well versed with regards to online or distance education modalities, but much of the instruction when it comes to public management, administration, and governance programs is largely dependent on, relatively classic, sabihin na lang nating well-established pedagogies, and has had a very difficult time transitioning into the pandemic. Okay? So last point is there's still that lingering question hanggang ngayon, hindi pa rin makaget over. Is there a Philippine public administration? Hanggang ngayon, that's still a question that some of our colleagues and mentors still ask, but that is really a question that is less important than what I would consider to be a more important question. I think the more important question is, are our public management, administration, and governance programs responsive to the needs of the Philippine public sector and Philippine society in general? No? Hanggang ngayon, hang up pa rin tayo dun sa identity issues. But I think the bigger question and the bigger issue here is responsiveness. No? So let me now go to the meat of my discussion on the challenges of Philippine public management, administration, and governance research. And in here, I will have to apologize in advance. No? Some of the things that I'm going to share will come from looking at the hard data, the numbers of public management, administration, and governance research. Some of it will hurt us. No? Medyo masakit, no? But these are some of the realities that I think we'll have just to deal with. Because these are really the objective realities of where we stand relative to many of our peers and contemporaries around the world. No? The first is research as reflected in the number of international index and peer-reviewed publications remains very low among the faculty of institutions offering public administration, public management, and governance programs outside of the NCPAG. Now, very concentrated. On one hand, it's very good that UP-NCPAG has been very productive, has served as the anchor of research when it comes to PMAG, no? But outside of NCPAG, its graduate students and its faculty members, no, number of international index and peer-reviewed publications has been relatively low. Our discipline is one of the relatively low in terms of productivity. When productivity is measured through the number of international index and peer-reviewed publications measured through ISI publications and Scopus po. Public Ad is relatively one of the shall we say, relatively relative to some of our other social science or management disciplines, medyo mas mababa ang ating production, no? Second point is higher quality scholarship has not really blossomed outside of the NCPAG, despite some earlier efforts to develop PA in the regions. I think we have to acknowledge a lot of efforts to recruit, to train, and to equip public administration scholars, researchers, and faculty all over the country. I think UP-NCPAG has trained now more than almost 3,000 or more than 3,000 graduate students, no, since its establishment. But scholarship, if scholarship is going to be measured through those publications, textbooks, peer-reviewed index publications, has not really caught up, no. Parang it has did not follow that we have now a lot of graduates all over the Philippines, that scholarship has also blossomed. And that's just the hard reality. I'm citing this scholar by the name of Tornea, cited by UP-NCPAG in 2023. No? And let me show you some of the hard numbers pertaining to this. No? So, if you go to the Scopus website, www.scopus.com, scopus.org, and you search for public administration in the Philippines, no, and you look at search this from 1951 actually, or 1961, actually from 1951 to 2023, you will see that only 51 documents are recorded. This means that there are only 51 Scopus Index articles, or an estimated around 10 articles per decade, 10 researches on Philippine public administration has been published, or 1 article per year in the last 6 or 7 decades. Medyo masakit po ito tanggapin, but this is the hard reality. I am not saying that there had been no other studies of public administration or not important or relevant too, but I think we have to call the discipline by the name. Since 1951 po, hindi nagbago ang pangalan ng public administration. No? Public administration, you might have embraced public management and public policy, but public administration is public administration. If you're going to search from 1951, are just very limited number of outputs. If you look at ISI, or Web of Science, you can have this number. Roughly around 30 articles have been published in the last 6 decades, or around 5 journal articles per decade. Ibig sabihin yan, 1/2 per year. This tells us, no, and it's a very hard truth for us to face, that our discipline, our field of study, is relatively medyo mababa po in terms of productivity. Okay? In terms of actual publication. Second, saan ang gagaling? Which institutions actually produce articles or studies on public administration in the Philippines? Ayan po. Pansinin nyo. No? Okay? So, much of it comes from UP, University of the Philippines, Diliman, UP-NCPAG, my university, College of Social Science and Philosophy, but the rest actually comes from other international organizations. Okay? So majority are produced by Philippine institutions, but many who are actually publishing studies on Philippine public administration, no, around 30% are institutions that are outside of the Philippines. Parang mas gusto nila, or their outside institutions, external organizations, are very interested in Philippine PMAG research, but many of our institutions are very kind of, maybe I know there's a lot of researches going on, but in terms of subjecting this to peer review and publication, medyo konti po, no? Sino yung mga nagpo-produce? Some more. Ayan po. Yan. Documents in terms of actual peer-reviewed and index research and Scopus, the highest number of documents or publications peer-reviewed and index and Scopus is 3 po. That is, of course, Dean Dr. Alex Brillantes. But after Dr. Alex Brillantes, there's now very limited number of scholars that actually produce articles or studies, peer-reviewed articles and studies in Scopus. If you look at ISI po, you can have this number, 50% of this number. So very few, less than 10 scholars actually produce much of the index and published work on public administration. I think I'll have to emphasize though that there are textbooks, researches, references, and case studies that are not Scopus index or ISI indexed. But in terms of when we are evaluated internationally in Times Higher Education or Quacquarelli Simmons, if this is the primary benchmark, Scopus and ISI, very limited. No? So what are the challenges? No? So going back to the challenges, the first is dearth of indigenous scholarship and teaching materials. Ang hirap po maghanap ng textbook. I have all of the textbooks on public administration in the Philippines, and they are from the UPNC PAG and maybe one or two outside of UPNC PAG. Very few teaching cases, no, very few references. The 51 articles and maybe some mga monographs or chapters of books. Ayan po. But I think relatively very limited po. Kulang yung Philippine-based or Philippine studies or Philippine-oriented or focused studies and teaching materials that we can use in class. That's why we have to rely very heavily on materials that have been produced by, Syracuse University, Harvard University, many of the other international or universities outside of the Philippines. The other is there's a lack of scholarly work focused on developing indigenous theories, concepts, or models of public administration in the Philippines. Much of the theories, I would say 99% of the theories that we learn in school come from the West. Western public administration, American public administration in particular. I can name just maybe one theory or model of one or two theory or model of public administration that has been developed and are more relatively indigenous or had been developed in the Philippines for the Philippines by Filipino scholars. So this hinders the ability of scholars to address unique challenges by Philippine public administration due to its distinct political and cultural context. Napaka-prevalent na tinatawag na globalist, universalist orientation that what is good for Western developed societies is also good for the Philippines. This may be a very dangerous assumption po, no? The other, yun nga, very few locally published textbook references and case studies. Most public management, administration, governance research is limited to scholars of a handful of the institutions. UPNC PAG primarily, later sa De La Salle University, some Ateneo, the School of Government, but primarily UPNC PAG po, no? Why is it concentrated to just a handful of institutions? Puro na sa NCR pa. Some of the scholars who were interviewed, and I've been interviewed and I have the fortune to talk to, says that much of the concentration of the scholarship in public management, administration, governance, research may be attributed to disparities in financial, intellectual resources, capacity, and cultural research in universities and higher education institutions. In the Philippines, there are 2 research universities, technically speaking, maybe 3 now. No, that would include the University of the Philippines, De La Salle University, possibly Ateneo de Manila University, that would qualify technically as research university by virtue of the resources and the capacity and the allocation that they put on in terms of research. Ibig sabihin, hindi sila primarily teaching schools. They actually put a lot of resources and time for research. A lot of universities in the Philippines want to become a research university, but many are still in the process of transition. No? And this is the reality. And I think many of you, my friends and colleagues, can relate to this one. The workload in most higher education institution leave little time for research. Relate po ba tayo, friends? May mga kapwa ko administrator dyan. Kailan pa tayo magre-research, di ba? We spend 80% of our time in meetings. So, and if we're not meeting, we are teaching. And according to the UPNC PAG, the typical, and they did some series of FGDs, the typical teaching load for regular faculty members in most schools, teaching public administration, management, and governance courses is around 20 to 23 units. There had been studies done before that the maximum number of units a faculty member could teach and still be effective in doing other things is 18 units. Tingnan nyo po, the average in our discipline, our field is 20 to 23 units. So the practical question for there is, kailan pa po tayo magre-research if most of our time is consumed with teaching? Wala pa dyan yung admin, wala pa dyan yung committee work, wala pa dyan yung community engagement work. So we are actually given very little time for research overall. Okay? So, all right. So, what do we do, no? Let me just go back, no? Ano ba dapat nating nire-research? What should be research? If we're going to strengthen research for PMAG education, what are the things that we should be doing research on? I want to emphasize that there are many things that we could study. Public sector, public management, public administration, and governance is a very broad area of research. But my personal position is I think that we need to be in the same page when it comes to the general direction and agenda for our public administration education. I think that our should be aligned with our national development goals. Why? No, because we produce leaders, managers, and staff for the public sector. And I think that public management, administration, and governance, PMAG education must be sync in step with the public sector. And the ambition natin 2040 vision is what the public sector, what the Philippine government, the Philippine state is aiming for. I think we have to kind of be in the same page when it comes to what we're looking for. I think there is nothing objectionable, unrealistic about ambition natin 2040, specifically as it's articulated in the Philippine Development Plan and other documents. No? Ayan. So the goal is an economic, social transformation or prosperous, inclusive, and resilient economy. There are certain incomes, quality of life targets or indicators. So saan po tayo pumapasok when it comes to public management, administration, governance research? This has been the roadmap that has been set by NEDA, National Economic and Development Authority, in the Philippine Development Plan. There are 4 components here: basic research and development and knowledge creation strengthened, market-driven and customer-centered research and development advanced, technology adoption, utilization, and commercialization scaled up, and innovation and entrepreneurship accelerated. Parang ang hirap i-relate, no? Ang hirap po i-connect. Kasi mga entrepreneurship, basic research, market, private sector, and technology. But what is the role of us, public administration? I'd like to kind of cite the work of one of my very good friends and colleagues, no? Si Rainer Catil, si Wolfgang Reschner, and Eric Caro, no? The title of this book is How to Make an Entrepreneurial State. And in this book, they argue that the role of the public sector and the bureaucracy is actually very important in making way or creating an environment that allows a state to be entrepreneurial and makes many of the things that we mentioned here possible. I will not go into details now. I think this book deserves a separate discussion by the authors. But the point here is that the research agenda that we do for discipline should be enabling, should actually enable our bureaucracy, governance, and public policy stakeholders and decision makers to make these things come true. Now, second is this one. This is the CHED's National Higher Education Research Agenda. I think any agenda that we make for ourselves in the field of public management, administration, and governance should align with national policy. No? So this is what the CHED is trying to do in its research agenda 2 from 2009-2018. Wala pa pong current one, no? Wala pang 2019 onwards, no? Not that I've seen. But the goal of CHED is to improve research capability of HEIs towards international competitiveness, enhance research productivity, in particular international publications, to generate knowledge or technologies needed for international, national, and regional higher education development, policy fund formulation, development of innovative programs, advancement of the frontiers of knowledge in the disciplines, and to promote and facilitate dissemination and utilization of research outputs. I think we cannot be moving in separate directions. I think we have to be synchronized, no? In terms of what we do. Dapat medyo aligned, hindi lang medyo, dapat po talaga aligned tayo with the CHED and the Philippine government, the Philippine Development Plan, Ambition 2040, and of course, the Sustainable Development Goals. No, dapat magkaka-align yung ating ginagawa at yung ginagawa ng ating government and other public institutions, no? If public management, administration, governance, education is meant to produce experts, managers, and leaders of the public sector, we should be looking at the more or less the same direction. So what can we do? How can we strengthen research now for PMAG education? Let me start with the basic premise that PMAG education must be responsive to Philippine societal needs. It needs to be said. We cannot have public administration education that exists in a vacuum or is disconnected to or misaligned with the needs of Philippine society. Now, we must design our programs cognizant of the actual needs of Philippine society. I think I need to emphasize here the needs of the civil service. One of my realization during the interviews is this. Very few HEIs teaching public administration, public management actually talk to the civil service. Medyo, this is a big and glaring gap for me. Bakit po? Why? If we're producing leaders, technical staff, leaders, managers for the civil service, and we assume that the public sector, most of which is comprised of the civil service, is where our graduates are headed, bakit hindi po tayo nag-uusap? No? Even in the roadmap of Philippine Public Administration, I did not see a very strong emphasis on the alignment of the competency needs of the civil service and public management, administration, and governance institution. I think this is a very big mistake. No? I think that there should be a very strong alignment. We should be producing what the civil service and the public sector actually needs. And for this to happen, we need to have this conversation. Second is that PMAG research must address the needs of both Philippine public management, administration, governance, and education, the needs of the public sector. May caveat po, no? Parang we are not just doing research so we can have teaching materials for our graduate and undergraduate programs in public management, administration, and governance. But it's very important that if we're going to make these programs responsive with, contextualized, and tailored to, and adapted to the local context, we need to produce materials that are of the appropriate context. We need to produce theories and models that are tailored to the local context, in the local setting. No? Secondly is that our research must be responsive to the needs of the Philippine society and the Philippine public sector. No, I mean, I recognize the value of basic research that may or may not have immediate applications, but public administration is special in that it is not just a field of study, but also an applied field of practice. It's a professional field. It cannot be divorced from practice. We cannot say that our theory is disconnected to or different from practice. Our theories must be suited to or tailored towards actual realities and actual practice, just as our practices must also be aligned with theories that have been developed accordingly. Ayan po, no? The other is that if we want research to be relevant, we must generate knowledge that can guide and inform governance stakeholders and decision makers. Some of us get frustrated with the realization that many of our governance stakeholders, policymakers, elected leaders do not have much appreciation about research, no? But I think we cannot take for granted the importance of what we do when it comes to research. We must do research that is useful to, that is relevant to, that is usable by, no, and that can be appreciated by our governance stakeholders and decision makers. No, it is imperative that the work that we do, the research that we do, would guide and inform the stakeholders and decision makers. We cannot just take this for granted. And because we are frustrated by our engagement and relationship with some of these politicians or elected officials, parang pwede na natin iwan, hindi po pwede. No? We cannot separate ourselves from these governance institutions, from government and from the elected and appointed leaders. No? Our work must be relevant for them because they're among the most important governance stakeholders and decision makers. And this one is hindi pa po yata official ito, but I think we need to have a sense of common direction. Hindi pa tayo pwede kanya-kanya when it comes to our programs. I think there should be at least a minimum set of guidelines and policy and a shared direction when it comes to our programs. I've seen so many variety of public management, public policy, public administration programs. We really need some kind of guideline. I am not saying that CHED should regulate us. I still believe in academic freedom, but I think there should at least be certain minimums, and I think there should be some kind of consensus among Association of Schools of Public Administration in the Philippines when it comes to how should we design, how should we teach our programs, and what kind of research should we do. This is just, if we want to kind of be relevant, if we want to make impact, this is something that we will have to do. So I have here some proposed agenda for research. This is not an exhaustive list, but I think very important that we have the following. Philippine PA theories and models. We have maybe one or two. We need more. We need more because not I'm saying that we're extra distinct and sui generis, that we are special, tayo lang. We don't know that. No, but there's distinct characteristics of Philippine society and culture that require us to consider how applicable many of the theories and models that we uncritically adopt from the West are. No, we may have to consider developing our own Philippine PA theories and models, even if these are modified or adapted versions of the ones that we encounter elsewhere. Second is Philippine PA education and PA practice. We need more studies of this po. Kaunti lang nagre-research or kaunti lang yung nagpa-publish ng studies on these topics. How is Philippine PA education taught? How is it practiced? No? What do our graduates do? These kinds of things we really need to find out. No? Comparative studies of PA practices in the Philippines and elsewhere. Ang hilig po natin sa maki-studies on our own local governments, but I think if we are to contribute to the discipline in general and to highlight them and emphasize the findings and the insights and the abstraction that we can generate from local researches, I think we need to kind of broaden and expand our perspective. A comparative perspective is very helpful. For all we know, many of the things that we do here and we discover here are unique, or they may actually be just variations of things that had been discovered or practiced elsewhere. So yun po, we can learn much from each other. Philippine public administration, PMAG, pedagogical approaches, how we teach. Meron man difference in terms of modality, in terms of instructional approaches, in terms of faculty. We need to look at the effectiveness and the different pedagogical approaches that we do. We need to also look at regional and local PA culture. Magkakaiba pa yung mga regions. There are distinct cultural markers and identities. which may or may not actually translate or influence how public administration is practiced, no? Despite many of national laws guiding how it should be done, no? We need to be sensitive to culture. We also need to be cognizant of the disruptive effects, the disruption caused by technologies, as we've seen in the pandemic and as we're seeing right now with the advent of artificial intelligence and similar technologies. How it impacts actual practices. Yan bang AI and machine learning in public administrations. Even before the pandemic, mga topics na po to when I attend conferences in other countries, but we really haven't discussed or explored this much in the Philippines. So I think I have very limited time. Let me just go to some of the practical directions I think it's necessary. How can we strengthen research for public management, administration, governance, education? Practical, no? I will go back to my key takeaways. The first one is we need better research production outside NCR. We need very productive research centers outside NCR, outside UP and CPAG, outside LaSalle, Ateneo, or if we add Development Academy of the Philippines, we need high-performing research centers or hubs in the regions that are developing theories, models, case studies that are tailored to the local regional context. This is something that we have to do if we want to develop researches that are responsive to the needs of Philippine society. And laki pa natin. We're one of the largest countries in Southeast Asia in the world. And we have very distinct regional characteristics and needs. Second is we need to overcome the resource capacity, cultural and other constraints that impede or hinder research. I mentioned kanina. We need to give time to our faculty to actually do research. We need to provide mechanisms or enable or capacitate them to actually raise funds or the resources needed to actually do research. We need to incentivize research. We need to build a culture of research, which is largely absent, because that's just not how we are trained or how we had been designed. But these are things that we need to do, if we are to strengthen the research in our country. The other is partnerships between government agencies or units and HEIs offering PMAG programs. We need to align what we teach and research and what the needs of the public sector are. I mean, the basic question here is responsiveness, We want to address actual needs. We don't want to address just theoretical needs or hypothetical needs. We want to actually solve problems. We want to address real-world needs. We want theories that are responsive to realities, not theories and models that are disconnected from what's actually happening out there. So one way to do this is to establish partnerships, Other is the redirecting research. Right now, 300 plus institutions with public administration program, but our orientation in terms of research is still very traditional. Many institutions still produce researches that are read by no one and that solve no problem. They are just basically academic requirements that go into the library. But I think if we can orient many of these researches into the actual issues and challenges of the Philippine public sector, now we're going to be able to make a lot more stakeholders appreciate the kind of research and education that we have. And we're going to make a lot of this research relevant. Imagine 317 institutions. Sabihin nyo na lang po na 50 thesis yan every year, 100 thesis. How many problems can we solve in a year? That's more, pagka 100 thesis per institution, we can solve 31,700 problems or challenges in 1 year. Imagine that. Ano po? Okay. The other is establishing formal research collaborations between regional HEIs and national centers of research like UP and CPAG. I think this is where me and my colleagues and mentors and teachers from UP and CPAG differs. When I read the roadmap, they want to maintain UP and CPAG as a hub for national research. I agree with that. It's still the main and only center of excellence in public administration, education, and research. But if research is to flourish, I think we have to kind of devolve, decentralize, and deconcentrate. No? And one way to do that is to establish research collaborations. Hindi kakayanin ng NC pagsaluhin ang needs ng mga institutions of PMAG institutions in the country. No? It's simply too much for any single one institution, or two or three, even for NCR institutions. And one way for us to strengthen the regional institutions is to establish research collaborations, because research collaborations can be an opportunity for research, sharing of intellectual resources, sharing of financial resources, sharing of expertise. Yan po, no? A formal research collaboration can empower, enable, and capacitate regional centers. The others is, of course, allocating adequate resources and support for research and HEIs. Specifically, ito, research deloading to give faculty time to do research. Hindi po kaya pag 21 to 23 average teaching load, hindi po talaga kaya. We need to deload faculty who want to or inclined to or who we demand to do research, offer research grants and seed funding for research, no? And also enable and capacity and train our faculty members who want to do research to raise research funding, establishing research fellowships for aspiring researchers. Aminin man natin o hindi, marami sa mga HEIs po natin, very limited research culture and very few researchers. If we can put them in institutions for half a year or 1 year of research fellowship, they can imbibe the research culture, the research acumen, and then hone and polish their skills. And when they go back to their own institutions, they can bring this research culture with them. Partnering or pairing junior researchers with established research mentors is also some other thing that we can do, no? If we want to, no, hindi pwedeng yung mga research experts or mentors lang yung magaling. We need to train the next generation of public administration scholars. Last point po, babalik ako sa key takeaways ko, no? PMAG education must respond to societal needs and support national development goals. We must be locked in step with the national government, with CHED, Civil Service Commission. We must address the needs of the educational institution, and the research that we do must address actual real needs of the Philippine public sector and the Philippine civil service in general. We have to talk to the civil service and the bureaucracy and government agencies. And we need to bolster research production outside of NCR. And then we need to strengthen and address the needs for stronger institutional commitment, resources, capacity, and create an enabling environment that will allow our colleagues and friends and respective departments to actually participate and contribute to research. So I think I will have to end here. Sakto na po, 4:59. Thank you very much. I'm Ador Torneo, and magandang hapon po sa inyo lahat.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ador, for the insightful lecture. So the final question in the PMAG education discussion was mind-boggling. Is the PMAG education really responsive to the PA practice? So I was quite left thinking. And of course, the research challenge is quite really a big challenge, especially for us, the students. So thank you very much. And so to help us clarify our thoughts and inquire with our speaker, we have the program director of the Masters in Public Administration and Business Administration Cluster of Ateneo de Naga University's Graduate School, Dr. Marshall Murillo. Dr. Marshall is an associate professor of public administration at the graduate school and the social sciences department in the same institution. He teaches public administration at both the graduate and undergraduate levels, and is an active council member of Ateneo de Naga University's Social Involvement Council and the Research Council. Dr. Marshall earned his PhD in public administration, majoring in administrative management from the Guangzhou University of Science and Technology in Wuhan, China in 2019. He was awarded a full scholarship grant under the Chinese Government Scholarship Chinese University Program. This scholarship supports senior administrators from ASEAN member countries in pursuing postgraduate studies in public administration, including administrative management, land resources management, e-government, and non-traditional security. His research interests are local governance and East Asian studies. Currently, Dr. Marshall's research projects are in the field of the youth governance in Naga City, aiming to understand and improve the participation of the youth in the decision-making process in the public sphere. Additionally, his current research project delves into environmental governance, focusing on conservation initiatives within the protected areas of Camarines Sur, understanding and seeking ways to enhance the effectiveness of these efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, our moderator for today's webinar, Dr. Marshall Murillo.
institutions could do to encourage and support the development of this type of scholarship?
谢谢大家好，我是 Joshua. So, good afternoon, and thank you very much for your question,
Right.
Professor Murillo. So, I look back from a historical sense, and some of the first Philippine public administration scholars, and when the Institute of Public Administration was established in 1951, were sent to the United States to study and take their public administration program. This is in line with the plan to kind of reconstruct and try to repopulate, so to speak, the Philippine bureaucracy at that time. Interestingly, when it came to research, some of the two first studies that I've encountered during that time, mga 1950s po ito, study ng local government administration of the government of Rizal, parang police administration in 1950s. I think one of the basic premise of the basic assumption when the Institute of Public Administration was established was that many of the professors, scholars, and professionals in these institutions will begin by using the materials that had been produced in the University of Michigan, the mother school of UPIPA, some of the other schools in Harvard, case studies, but that eventually and gradually IPA is going to produce materials that is local materials, teaching cases, textbooks, that it's going to use for its own teaching purposes. To a certain extent, I think that IPA, which has now transformed into UP-NCPAG, may have continued along that path. It had been producing materials that it can use to teach. But I think in terms of research production, the growth in the number of higher education institutions that teach public administration, public management, and related programs, di ba? 1 in 1951, 317 in 2023. Iba po kasama dyan yung mga hindi rehistrado sa CHED, ha? Its own programs. But many of the institutions outside of NCR and outside of UP-NCPAG has been relying on UP-NCPAG or had been relying on the materials because many of the faculty members are trained in different institutions overseas, had been bringing the teaching materials that they have encountered in their own graduate programs elsewhere. So in a way, our research has not really caught up with our teaching. What do we do from an institutional point of view? I think number one, I think we really have to acknowledge that many of us had been reliant on teaching materials which may or may not be suitable to local context. I think yung acceptance is number one. Number two is the embrace of the possibility that there might be local, regional realities, needs, and contexts which actually require us to uncover and to unpack. Kasi isipin mo, why would if you're based in Bicol, for example, right? Are there particularities in the Bicol region? Are there particular contexts that may require you to actually re-examine? That actually, are there certain contexts that kailangan nating i-examine very closely? Many of us operate in the assumption, we call it globalist, that what has been discovered elsewhere is also applicable to the local context, and we have never been very critical of this point of view. So I think the first one is acknowledgement of local realities, regional realities. The second is this: we cannot continue to outsource research in other institutions. The global trend when it comes to public administration research has been hindi na po tayo sabay-sabay, while there are certain things in the global stage like artificial intelligence and machine learning which are shared realities. In terms of context, I just came back from Europe. The Baltic states, they have their own research agenda that are very relevant to and regional specific to the Baltic states. Medyo may ganon, no? There's a very, very strong kind of emphasis on adapting public administration, education, and research for regional, local, national realities. Ito wala pa po tayong ganon, no? We have not really reached that point where we actually acknowledge that from an institutional level. I think that's the first thing that we're missing.
So,
The second part I've already discussed, no? If we embrace and acknowledge this and accept this, then we can go to the second part.
right.
Then we acknowledge the need to actually do local research and that there's actually a need for indigenous scholarship. Not for the sake of having an indigenous scholarship. Not just for the sake of having, para lang masabi na meron tayong like a Bicol administration,
Right.
di ba? Or Visayan or Mindanao administration or BARM administration. It's really, we really need to kind of look at local realities. If we appreciate and accept that there are certain contexts, regions, and local contexts that actually need us as a study, then the research will follow. I think that's the first part.
Right, acceptance, no? Yeah, but I'm also curious, Doc Ador. I think we do have also some brilliant scholars, no, in our Zoom right now. They can actually ask questions, also share their insights, no, regarding obviously so many subtopics that we have touched this afternoon, no. Yeah, kasi nakikita ko kasi, Doc Ador, meron bang incentive, no, from many of our colleagues and researchers to really explore these indigenous concepts and models? Maybe, I don't know, maybe this is one of those barriers why most of our colleagues are not delving into this particular scholarship. Are there any, for example, how can policymakers and funding agencies incentivize this? Do we really incentivize this? No?
Well, incentive, no? Number one, I think, I don't know, no? I've encountered this in HEIs. I am not so sure within private higher education institutions, but I think the trends are similar. Number one is in the last couple of years, the CHED has actually kind of raised the standards when it comes to promotion.
Right.
Right. International peer-reviewed index publication is actually now required, especially kung magko-crossover ka from associate professor to the full professor ranking in HEIs. I mean, from a professional point of view, that kind of is a very, very good incentive, right? So in terms of promotion, the promotion standards is actually kind of increased, no? To the point that you know, working or publishing studies along this line is actually one certain way for us academics and professionals to get promoted, no, from a professional point of view. Second, in terms of funding, no, I would not say that no. At this point in time, my experience with the National Research Council of the Philippines, ngayon pa lang, sa totoo lang, nire-recognize ng marami sa mga elected officials at the national government level na napaka-importante ng ginagawa nating research.
Right.
I've encountered in the last few years, I've been involved in several researches funded by Congress, of course through either the DOST or the National Research Council of the Philippines. There is now a growing recognition and acknowledgement that public policy development and decision making can be better done and can be improved if they are backed by research. So meron na po, just to be very upfront, there are now a lot of research opportunities, especially for those of us in the field of public administration, public management, and governance. Meron pong funding. Hindi pa na alam ng marami sa atin, but actually, there are. The third is I was just attending a program of CHED implemented by the Asian Institute of Management. This is for local universities and colleges. And many of our attendees are from DILG or local chief executives. There has been a growing realization, especially in the last 5 years or so, that actually local needs and challenges by local governments can actually be addressed by many local institutions with research capabilities, and that those of us in PMAG field and research can actually do a lot.
Right.
It requires a little bit of radical rethinking kasi ganito, many of us have been used to developing research that may or may not have immediate application.
Right.
Aminin man natin o hindi, karamihan ng mga thesis ng mga estudyante natin, undergraduate at graduate, wala naman talaga nagbabasa maliban sa atin. Di po ba? But, you know, there is actually a growing recognition that the kind of research that we can do can really solve and address real-world problems. So meron na po, no? There is now a growing acknowledgement. There is a growing number of research grants or willing local chief executives, even in Congress, they are now willing to fund. So for those of us, of course, from our point of view, ito pa rin. Starting from the reality that public management, administration, and governance is a field that has relatively, hindi tayo yung pinakamababa in terms of research output. Hindi ko nasasabihin ko sino. Maraming mas mababa yung production kaysa sa atin. But we have a lot to share because the Philippines is has the oldest modern Western public administration tradition, at least in Asia. Hindi pa tayong oldest, ang pinaka-oldest China, 5,000 years old. That's going to be really hard to beat. But the point is, in terms of scholarship and what we can do and what we can research in terms of formal structure, informal research, we actually have the longest tradition.
Right.
No, that we can draw on. So if you're looking at it from a career point of view, from recognition point of view, from promotion and the research funding opportunity, there's actually a lot that we can gain from kind of really pouring on us. I think that the main question for me here, Professor Murillo, is not whether or not there is actually incentive. It's actually, sabi nga nila, the soul is willing, but the body is weak.
I agree.
Many of us simply do not have the time.
Right.
And many of the institutional policies in our own HEI simply, kahit gustong-gusto natin mag-research, simply does not enable us or allow us to really allot enough time to actually do research. I think that's the bigger challenge for us. Resources and an enabling environment. But in terms of, incentive or reason to do research, I think many of us kind of already see that. Even without all of the perks that I mentioned, I mean, we are into this field because we are all into public service.
Right.
That in itself is an incentive. Di po ba?
And Dr. Ador, I'm sorry, maybe there are some colleagues who want to ask question. They're free to open their microphone. No? I don't want to hijack this open forum. Like, I don't want just to be one-on-one interview with Professor Ador. But yeah, speaking of resources, Doc Ador, I'm pretty sure, you've mentioned in your discussion earlier some of these strategies, obviously, but I think, like me, many of our colleagues here from different HEIs want to also perhaps know, what do you think are the best training and capacity building programs that HEIs could promote, utilize, that could, at least bridge this gap, in one, appreciating the culture of knowledge generation, and at the same time making sure that this knowledge will be utilized in public sector, in contributing to several government practices. Do you know any good and best practices where capacity building and training programs for researchers, for public administration experts that HEIs can actually learn from?
Yeah. The buzzword in many higher education programs in general is what they call industry-academe partnerships.
Yeah.
Right? So in many countries, they have very strong research cultures and the R&D, research and development, because there is a very strong alignment and partnership between the higher education institutions, the research institutions, and the industries. I've seen this when I was in South Korea, in Japan, in Singapore. That the companies are just also willing and so happy to support and finance researches by universities, because it's the universities that actually generate technologies and patents and discoveries that actually feed into many of these industries, that drive the growth and expansion of many of these industries. They're profitable. Now, we are not working in the private sector, we are working in the public sector. But the concept of industry, HEI partnership and collaboration is still applicable. There are many problems and challenges of the public sector that those of us in PMAG, in the field of PMAG, can actually solve. But there is a disconnect. We really don't have that infrastructure. So I think the first thing that we need to kind of establish and to develop the capacity is we need to establish that alignment between the industry, the public sector, that's our industry, the public sector. Primarily, the government is our largest, and the government never runs out of problems or challenges. I think everyone knows and acknowledges this. And the government is also the single largest holder of resources, bar none. There is no other stakeholder in our entire society with more resources and more problems to solve than the government. So I think that's the first thing. We need to think, we need to build the capacity of our faculty members and our policy decision makers to kind of see each other from the academe point of view. We need to reorient our academe from being just academics into academic and practitioners. We call them pracademics.
Yeah.
Practitioner academics. Academics that solve real world practical problems on the side or as a part of their vocation or their calling. The second one is we need to develop resource mobilization capacity. Research can actually be in many other countries. Research is funded by government because government realize the needs. R&D culture in most countries that have progressed, the Asian tiger economies, they typically allot more than 2%, 2.5% of their GDP at the minimum to research and development. That includes public administration.
Right.
But this may or may not be enough. We also have to train and to equip our faculty with the skills and the competencies to actually raise resources to complement the resources that are available within our own respective institutions. Alam, tanungin natin yung mga kasama natin. How many of us know actually how to write proposals, research proposals, and grants? How many of us have the experience to actually secure large grants to support our research endeavors? I think very few of us. But research can be not just intellectually rewarding. It can also be a self-sustaining, self-supporting, self-financing endeavor. If we think of research as a sacrifice, then definitely wala tayong masyadong incentive to sacrifice lang.
Right.
But if we can see research as something that's going not to only intellectually fulfill us, but will also compensate us for the time and effort that we put in, then definitely that's a very good incentive.
Right.
And, the third one would be research culture, which I think is not well established here, but I think research culture follows institutional commitment and realignment of priorities towards research. If the institution commits to research, allocates enough resources, and aligns its priorities to support research, then we can easily set up research culture. But we cannot set up a research culture without those things.
Right.
Kailangan ng highest level of administration must commit to research and to allocate. Simpleng bagay lang.
Right.
Yung mga faculty na gusto mag-research, bawasan yung teaching load. Dito ba?
Do we have administrators here who can who can support that and make this happen?
Baka ako lang po yan. Baka ako lang.
Yeah. The thing is, I echo that also, and at the same time, we have to set up this enabling environment where young and early career researchers could follow the footsteps of our idols like Professor Adorno. But again, yun nga there are so many bottlenecks: administration, also the culture of research, the value of research for these students, for example. This could be diverse, obviously. I could go on with so also my frustrations at the same time wish list in in the field of research, no, but we don't have time, no. But I think this afternoon highlights that our institutions, the higher education institutions, really serve as the primary hubs where innovative approaches and comprehensive research in PMAG can really be can be nurtured, no. Obviously fostering as what you've mentioned, a responsive and adaptable educational framework, no, that really meets the demand and the ever-changing PMAG environment. We're not even talking about yet AI and blockchain here, no. We're just talking about the
Yeah, wala
basics,
pa po yun.
diba? So maganda sana kung andun na tayo sa level na yun, but there are so many things that we have to do in terms of fostering this enabling environment for PMAG, Philippine PMAG to flourish. No? And it's important that we have this roadmap already. Right.
Labas na, Doc.
Research ko lang?
Sanay labas.
Can I hear it? Joke lang.
Yeah.
Salamat, Doc Adorno. Unless you want to say a few more insights before we really close this really meaningful open forum, Doc Ador?
Apo.
Meron ka pa ba?
I'm just gonna make disclaimers, no? All of the opinions and insights I express are not the position of my university or institution.
Right.
They are my personal insights and opinions po and aking but I'm happy to discuss and explore this, no, with all of you. Kami po sa De La Salle University, the Robredo Institute of Governance are also happy to collaborate with the researchers. I think I have to walk the talk as well. Now, I said that one of the ways by which we could actually empower our institutions and researchers is by establishing research collaborations.
Correct.
And I stand by that position. No, ako sa totoo lang po, ako am also a frustrated researcher. Every week, I just have 1 or maybe 2 hours at most to do research. Most of my time is spent in actually admin things and doing things that have nothing to do with what I really want to do.
Right.
Gaya po ni kapwa ko administrator, gusto ko rin ng research deloading, gusto ko rin mag-break, gusto ko rin ng oras magsulat. Hindi pa po ako, 10 years na po ako administrator. Wala pa po akong break, di pa ako nakapag-sabbatical, wala pa akong research leave. Sinisingit ko lang po part-time. 1 hour, 2 hours every week, ganun lang po. But I think one of the ways by which we could go around this is basically by doing research collaboration. My experiences in working with some of my very prolific colleagues is that through collaboration, by delegating and dividing the work, a group of researchers and scholars and institutions can actually produce more than the sum of their parts than what we individuals can actually produce.
Grabe.
And I think that's something that we can I think that's something that we really have to explore. This also allows us to share not just our time, not just our intellectual resources, but also our financial, our data, and many other resources. Dumadali po yung trabaho kapag marami tayo, tsaka sama-sama tayo nag-work. This is also, the bayanihan spirit is not just applicable in making houses or transferring kubos. It is also applicable in research, as I've discovered quite belatedly.
Right.
So I think the bayanihan culture in research is something that must be something that we really kind of have to concretize and operationalize, and that we should really explore if we want PMAG education and research to flourish in this country. Yun lang po. Maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat, Prof. Ador. And I hope our friends here could also help us promote that. Good thing we have ASPAP, we have PSPA to support all these PMAG-related endeavors. Ma'am Cecil, back to you po.
Thank you, Dr. Marshall and Dr. Ador, for the full fact exchange. So mag-research. We now come to the awarding of the Certificate of Appreciation to our speakers. To read the citation, Ateneo de Naga University Center for Local Governance, together with the Graduate School, awards this Certificate of Appreciation to Dr. Ador R. Tornillo for unselfishly sharing his time, knowledge, and expertise as a resource speaker during the session on research of the webinar series on navigating the pedagogy of public administration in the new normal, entitled Developing Research to Strengthen PMAG Education in Response to Societal Issues, in partnership with the Association of Schools of Public Administrations in the Philippines, Incorporated, held on October 13, 2023, 3:30 to 5 p.m. in Circle Governance Facebook page. Signed, President of Ateneo de Naga University, Father Roberto Ezequiel N. Rivera, SJ. Signed, Dean of the Graduate School, Director of Center for Local Governance, Dr. Malusi Barciliano. And signed, President of the ASPAP, Dr. Mitchville A. Rivera. Virtual
Salamat
applause
po.
to you, Dr. Ador. Thank you very much.
Maraming salamat.
And
May clap react ba dito?
Yes.
Clap react.
thank you for the really interesting insights presentation. So to wrap up today's session, let us have the closing message from the ASPAP auditor, Dr. Jack Isolana.
Good evening,
Over
everyone.
to you, sir.
Good evening. Greeting of world peace and solidarity. On behalf of our family, the Association of Schools of Public Administration in the Philippines, our warmest congratulations to the Ateneo de Naga University for another successful webinar on navigating the pedagogy of public administration in the new normal. Indeed, Ateneo de Naga University, through the leadership of its president, Father Roberto Rivera, SJ, and the active representation of Dr. Malu Barciliano to the ASPAC board, Ateneo ever since has shown its profound commitment and full support to the ASPAC aspirations. Thank you to Ateneo de Naga University. Likewise, our heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Ador Torneo for sharing with us his grounded thoughts and ideas in developing research in public administration. His vast experience as a teacher and practitioner of public administration does not only give us today his lecture, the present, the past, and the new horizon of research in
Kumain na
public
kayo?
administration. He likewise emphasized that research in public administration is the one that is designed geared towards addressing societal
Isa sa ilaw lang
problems,
yan.
improving the capacity of the government, and the attainment of the holistic development of mankind. To all the participants, the men and women behind this activity, a big hand to all of you, for without you, this event would not be possible. At this juncture, with the permission of the organizing committee, I now officially close our program. Thank you and stay safe, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Isolana. And of course, thank you for ASPAP for giving us this opportunity also to host. So at this point, please be reminded to complete your attendance by filling out the evaluation form via the link as can be seen on the screen, tinyurl.com/adno-aspap-s2. So we would like to take this opportunity to invite you on the next session for this trilogy. That would be on November 10, 2023, 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. on the same social media platform, focusing on social involvement with the topic transcending theories to application through service learning, where we can learn from the director of the Institute of Gender, Race, Sexuality, and Social Justice, Dr. Leonora C. Angeles. Also, the Ateneo's KLG invites us to the webinar series to the webinar series on the replicable practices on local governance featuring Iriga City on October 27, 2023. So that would be at 3:30 to 5 p.m. via Zoom with the Iriga City Mayor, Honorable Wilfredo Rexy, C. Oliva. So we hope you can finish the evaluation link. We thank you again to everyone, to the participants, ASPAP, to the Ateneo administrators, and for every one of you who attended this webinar. Once again, thank you for being with us in the second part of the webinar series brought to you by the ASPAP Ateneo de Naga Graduate School and Center for Local Governance. This has been Seth, your host, signing off. Bye-bye.